Hey everyone, it is Eric, it is Jay. We are back from doing time in Joliet at Autobahn Country Club, which is a country club. It's a nice place with Porsche Cup cars parked in the way and Radicals and Star Mazda School cars running about 90 miles an hour through the pits. But, you know, when we're there, it's like Caddyshack.
Yeah, kid, park my car, get my bags, and put on some weight, will you?
Now, hella sweet, we got a bunch of at this, by which I mean some team sent us this sort of godfathery message and then went through the paddock and hung a bunch of giant. Clearly this was meant for the Porsche Cup cars, not for us, obviously.
So this being a country club, I decided that I would go full Frank Bacon for this race as a judge. Now, who is Frank Bacon? He is a fictional automotive journalist on the internet modeled after all of the automotive journalists who show up on press trips to eat all the shrimp and take away all of the free stuff, and then they wear it to the next press trip and talk about press trips rather than the car they were supposed to be driving.
Did they let you drive this time?
No, I don't drive press cars. No, I just write about them.
I played that whole bit, so did Aaron Cole for the whole weekend. It was hella sweet.
Mitsubishi took us to the first tour in 2013.
Made their debut? Yes, world debut.
And the box seats, the seats weren't really comfortable, you know?
The service was slow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was forever to get a drink.
But terrible Romeo Golf Group. They came with what they called the Chicago Handshake. What is the Chicago Handshake? Well, they tried to bribe us with the Chicago Handshake, which is Malort and old-style beer. Now, I don't know how Malort is becoming a thing in Lemons, but it is, and it should not be. It is disgusting. Stop bringing us Malort. So these guys weren't entirely terrible. They had a pretty good theme. They were lobbying the 16 years of BMW oppression theme, trying to get their E30 brought back down into Class B. We did put them in Class B with one penalty lap. Why do we give them one penalty lap? Because one of their teammates was wearing legitimate BMW lifestyle wear, trademark, and was not ironic about it.
Had some hella sweet rookies. Junkyard Monkey had a Toyota Corolla with a 3-speed automatic that was painted to look like a fairly convincing Audi. I don't even know how you do that. That was hella sweet. They almost won Class C in their first race.
Hella sweet team, wildly ambitious, very appropriately named. Now, last time we saw this team, they were in the Ginger Man paddock with this old race car, completely not ready, hadn't run in years, and it was in a zillion pieces. Like, oh, we're going to get this ready for the race. Well, clearly they didn't figure that out. They should have been this right. Car still wasn't ready. They were halfway through a Saab theme. This was a Volkswagen. They were theming it as a Saab. Great, good on them. Couldn't finish that. We come back Sunday morning. They had pushed the car way out to the corner of the paddock because they were tired of us ribbing them. They're hitting it with rattle cans now, really trying to make a real theme. And they did, and they got to the green flag on Sunday. So the moral is, it's never too late to redeem yourself from a terrible theme.
Big Bird was there with their Pontiac Firebird. Now this had a V6 last year and they decided it needed an LS1 to be a real competitive car. Suffice to say, that did not help them. But they had a Top Gun theme, which is very, present and popular at the moment. It was pretty hell sweet.
Well, there was a lot of butt turbling from fairly experienced teams at this race, starting with Sucker Punch. They brought their horrible C4 Corvette, B-class car. How is that a B-class car? Why, you rude classic, $500 my ass! So they decided they got a C4 that as hell never worked, a Camaro engine that never worked. Let's combine them and then it's going to be great. Was it? No, it was not. The exhaust continually fell off. They did not win B. I would not give them $500 for this car. It is but terrible.
Fireball Racing had their 1967 Ford Fairlane there, and they noticed during the test day that the car wasn't driving quite right. How you would tell that, I have no idea. But they decided the fix was to swap in a set of brand new leaf springs in the paddock, and that was going to fix it. That really didn't do the trick, so they said, well, why don't we just rebuild the entire front suspension at the racetrack while we're at it? So they did that, and guess what? It didn't actually fix what was wrong with it. It turns out when they put the leaf spring back in, that it rocked the differential back a couple degrees, and so the U-joints smashed themselves against the unibody for a while until the whole drivetrain kind of fell apart. But terrible.
Also, but terrible, Team Skid Steer and their veteran Bobcat. Speaking of Fords with crappy differentials, theirs blew up. Probably it's all that Pinto power. Just couldn't take it. Hella Sweet Finger Tight Racing came back with their Gremlin and also came back with their Less Quick and Bunny Outfit theme. Totally awesome. So we love that. And then they finished 8th overall with a Gremlin. Brilliant.
Hella Sweet, a futile and stupid gesture, not lemons in the broader sense, but the actual name of a team with a Miata. The team captain is a cancer survivor, so they brought a proctology theme complete with elbow-length rubber gloves and a reminder on the car to get your cancer screenings and recognize signs of your body not acting normally. At the end of the weekend, cancer survivors signed the trunk of the Miata. That was hella sweet.
All right, let's move on to the winners. Yokohama Road Manglers. Who showed up on Yokohamas and won this time? Kaiser von Scheisse. Kind of broke our heart. It's a all-black Mercedes. They swear they're going to have a real theme next year. If they don't, we're actually taking their tires back.
Heroic Fix requires a bit of explaining. This is Distracted Motorsports in their Merkur XR4 Ti. In the early days of Lemons, this team called The Tools built a really bitchin' Lemons grade replica, and it finished 3rd overall at Gingerman in 2010. Pretty incredible. And then they put it behind the barn and left it for 12 years. And some other hapless fools came across and said, oh man, we could totally resurrect this thing. The former team captain gave it to them, said, go enjoy yourself. They showed up at the track, they wrenched on it Thursday all night till midnight, and they said, man, I think we got it. And then Friday, they wrenched on the car all day, they missed tech, but they kept working on it, and they got to midnight and they said, man, I think we got it. Saturday, took the green flag, something was wrong, they came in, they wrenched on it till midnight, but they thought they had it. Sunday, they smoked out the entire grid with the oil boiling out of the exhaust, and they did not turn any laps, but they wrenched for 4 straight days at the racetrack. That was heroic.
Yeah, I got screwed. Trophy went to all of the Fieros. We had 3 Fieros at this race, and we just figured, like, oh, let's just put them all in C. That will work itself out. They're like half the field. Clearly one of them is going to win, right?
Yes, well!
So, what went wrong? Well, how much time have you got? Let's start with Cheap Thrills. It is a V6, stock, gorgeous, preservation class, this thing. We figured, well, this is a no-brainer. This thing's going to walk away from the field. Not to be. In some crazy misfire, they couldn't figure it out. Turns out they had a bunch of North Star injectors lying around. I said, well, General Motors, let's try it. Plugged them in, did a little bit of work. Thing all of a sudden ran great. In fact, it ran so great, they managed to finish 13th in C. I only thought they were 8 cars, so I don't know how they did that poorly, but it was terrible.
Fiero number 2 was 2 wrongs make a right, which is, of course, a Saab turbo swap in a Fiero. Obviously, the conclusion to draw there. Now, really, we know this engine's an Ecotec, kind of, and they won Class C at High Plains in June, but the car limped for literally 10 of the 15 hours there, so we put it back in C, figured it would be fine, they wouldn't run away with it, and we were pretty justified. It broke an axle on test day, and then they welded it back together, and then the throttle cable snapped, and then all of the wiring, who could have guessed from the Saab going into a General Motors product, was unhappy, but they beat the other Fiero and finished 11th in C.
Now that just brings us to the 3rd spectacular Fiero of Team Pantagani. So this was going to be the cheater silhouette racer. This thing had a turbocharged Ecotec from an HHRSS. $500 my ass! Now, clearly, you ask anybody on the internet, and this thing is going to walk away from the field. This is basically a Lamborghini Miura come to a Lemons race. Well, went about as well as you could expect. Another throttle cable snap. All right, they came and brought that in. They ran the car off the track like 3 different times, had 3 black flags. Oh, sorry, yeah, okay, we'll come back in. They went back out, then they blew an axle. They got towed back in, then they went back out, then a bunch of misfires. Notice pattern here. And then they had to come back in. Anyway, to be fair, they did dominate the Fierro field, 7th in Class C.
So who actually won Class C? Well, it wasn't the Techniques d'Avant garbage. If you remember the ancient history of this car, automotive journalist Mike Austin put this thing in the top 10, won Class C and Class B with the original 10-valve engine in it. Fast forward a couple years, he sold it to Derek Steinkamp, who said, man, we need 20 valves and a turbo on this thing, and after about 12 races was crushing Class C, and then suddenly was not when the wheel bearing seized. What this means is that Derek has spent 8 years and doubling the horsepower to get almost back where Mike Austin had it with 110 horsepower.
So who actually won Class C? Well, it was Stranger Danger and the Ruckus Rangers in a bone stock Chevrolet Corvair done up like Rick's spaceship from Rick and Morty. Because of course it was.
I want to give a shout out to the Class B winners, Polka Kings and their BMW 5 Series. Now, normally we don't care about BMWs, but these guys are kind of the poster children for lemons. We saw them 5 years ago. They were utterly hopeless, had never been on a racetrack or in a race car, and in about the space of 12 to 14 races, somewhere in there, finished 3rd overall, won Class B. That's amazing. Super proud of these idiots.
Special trophy for this race was the Rainbow Trout teetering on the edge of IP infringement trophy. This went to Jeff Gorton's Racing and their Monte Carlo. Now, Jeff Gorton's is a mashup of the Jeff Gordon Monte Carlo theme and Gorton's Fish Stick. So really, we could all be sued like from at least 2 different entities and their holding companies. They also brought a legitimate Monte Carlo Z34. This is the double overhead cam super whoop-de-doo Chevrolet Monte Carlo from the era, which is to say almost as fast as a Honda minivan, but guaranteed GM sound of power.
Organizer's choice went to We're Just Here for the SR and their Chevy Blazer. Always love seeing Chevy Blazers and lemons.
Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car.
Now, these guys built the famous big font Isuzu Pup that rolled over at High Plains, so they are fresh off of their 1-year rollover ban on the Isuzu Pup, and they brought it hard with another monster truck parody theme with the Grape Picker Blazer. The team captain, Andrew, is the Lemons iRacing staple, so he slapped a bunch of the iRacing tropes on there, and then during BS inspection gave me, Frank Bacon, a perfect, seamless press junket presentation that I really appreciated.
Judge's choice went to 6-Speed Racing. Now, think about this for a second. If you are the art agency that does all the spectacular, exciting, adventurous motorsports, photography, and creative content for Polaris, what kind of vehicle are you going to bring to a Lemons race? Probably weren't guessing a bone-ass stock Honda CR-V, were you? Well, that's where you're wrong. Shows you're just not a creative type. That's what these guys brought. It was tippy, it was slow, the brakes were constantly on fire. They kind of looked like they were having the time of their lives, however, so hats off to these guys.
The eBay Motors Halloween Meets Gasoline trophy's gonna require a little bit of explaining here, and this kind of follows the tenet that a really, really good Lemons theme is understood by exactly one person in the paddock. And this was exactly that. So let us talk for a moment about Rack's Restaurants. Now, this was basically the Midwest version of Arby's. You know, roast beef and curly fries. And in their infinite wisdom, marketing this to the Midwest meant we need marketing that is basically like Saturday Night Live on meth. This was represented by their spokesman, Mr. Delicious, And frankly, the jokes are better than anything we can come up with.
Just had some rather delicate surgery. If there's no change, he doesn't have to squirm so much to put it back in his pocket.
In the end, choosing edgy marketing when you're trying to sell roast beef sandwiches to Meemaw from Delphos, Ohio backfired, and the parent company went bankrupt instead. Team Captain Brian showed up dressed as Mr. Delicious, and they shot a Rax Restaurants commercial during BS inspection. They flew Rax banners from their golf carts, and Mr. D dropped by to impart some life wisdom a couple times just for good measure.
That takes us to the index of effluency, the top prize of the 24 Hours of Lemons. This went to TD Eyesore Racing and their Volkswagen TDI. This is yet another one of those places where Lemons iRacing is starting to cross over. Well, I was about to say the real world. Starting to cross over into 24 Hours of Lemons and vice versa. Now, these guys, they've got this incredibly slow diesel. They had their Mooshlong Lager theme. It's a long, drawn-out story from when Mental Ward was on iRacing and could not pronounce the word Mulsanne over and over again. They would come into the paddock, they'd have a sandwich, whatever, they'd chit-chat, somebody else would get back in, then they would go back out and drive. And even at that 60th fastest lap overall, they damn near won Class C in this thing. They finished 20 overall with a car that was almost the slowest thing out there, and they weren't even trying. Hella sweet. IOE, slam dunk. Here's Lemons in a nutshell.
Any questions? Yeah, when's the buffet?
It'll be about midnight. You good?